Supergirl from Warner Brothers and DC Studios is set to release this Friday, and if you believe a lot of the early box office tracking models, things aren't looking that good. Even Friday last week, Sean Robbins of Box Office Theory still had Supergirl coming in somewhere between roughly $40 and $50 million, guiding towards the $48 million line, and that seems to be kind of lining up with what a lot of other people are saying, but then again, we'll probably have more information by Wednesday afternoon from Deadline Magazine and Variety and some others out there in the Hollywood trades with their final projections. And we're going to talk about what this movie needs to do to be profitable, but along came a funny wrinkle this week that threw a monkey in the wrench. Everybody seems to be misinterpreting this, or almost everybody in the social media sphere seems to be misinterpreting this. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today is this $100 million promotional campaign as a partnership to Warner Brothers, something that is a tale as old as time when it comes to movies, but most people don't seem to get. Here we go. Ready Online. All right, let's get right into it. And I saw this today and I figured, well, probably nothing was funnier or perhaps more perfect than this right here. Supergirl to show that girls can be just as good as boys at everything except the box office.
It's funny because it's true.
That from the Babylon Bee. And yeah, there's a number of other good ones out there. And I'm not trying to sit here and make fun of this movie for the sake of making fun of it. It just is what it is. This was a movie, Supergirl, that I was pretty concerned about box office performance-wise an entire year ago when this character was introduced at the end of Superman that we got last year. Now, that movie certainly wasn't a bomb, but it didn't really turn a profit of any kind at the box office, although Warner Brothers seemed at least outwardly satisfied enough, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with things like the PVOD sales that came in after that probably got it over the hump. And then I found out there was something else funny going on at Warner Brothers. Check this out. In case you didn't notice this recently, Amazon Prime now has Superman from Warner Brothers playing on it as part of Prime, which is unusual to me because up until now, Warner Brothers had not been sharing anything that I'm aware of during the Pay One window. Superman released roughly a year ago, basically the same slot that Supergirl is releasing in this year. It didn't even get to HBO Max until around September, if I'm not mistaken, after it had a run on PVOD for about 30 days. Well, here we are. If you do the math, it's about 9 months later after it hit HBO Max. It's now available on Amazon Prime. That's still firmly inside the very valuable Pay One window for films like this, which is the first 18 months that a movie gets to, in this case nowadays, streaming or AVOD streaming or fast streaming. Basically anything that doesn't include PVOD or something where you have to rent or buy it for a special fee for that film. What that seems to suggest is that Warner Brothers has adopted a slightly new model, at least for DC pictures. We've seen a lot of the DC library in the last year or two wind up on Netflix, but that's well beyond the Pay One. We're talking about Pay Two, Pay Three, and beyond, which usually fall in 18-month increments. This is right in the middle of the Pay One. This is something similar to what Universal Studios does with all of their content released in theaters, including live action and animation, where it goes to Peacock, its own proprietary streaming service, for the first 4 months of the Pay One, then spends the next 10 months of the Pay One over on Netflix before returning back to Peacock for the final 4 months of the Pay One.
Do you want my head to explode?
What that suggests to me is that Warner Brothers knew in advance or had something struck with Amazon to make sure that they were going to have an additional nice little chunk of change for this film even after the theaters, even after all of the revenue from PVOD, and now this, something in the Pay One window to where Warner Brothers was not exclusively paying itself to stream it on its own proprietary service, HBO Max. So one has to wonder if Warner Brothers doesn't have the exact same plan for Supergirl here to collect a few tens of millions of dollars from giving away partial rights in the Pay One to perhaps Amazon again. But let's get to what this movie really needs as a baseline to be successful, and then address this $100 million promotional marketing partnership that Deadline talked about this week. What we know so far is that Supergirl was reported as having a net $175 million production cost. Now, again, the key word being net, meaning for everybody out there trying to play armchair quarterback on this and suggest that, oh, there's a whole bunch of money in tax credits and blah, blah, blah. That's not, no, that's what net means. Net means after the film tax credits have been calculated and factored in, $175 million was the net that Warner Brothers came out of pocket to make this film. A very similar budget to what was allegedly reported when it came to Mandalorian and Grogu, but of course we dissected that one and had some real problems with it. Now that could exist here too, but as of this moment, I don't have any evidence suggesting otherwise, so we're gonna go with the 175 figure for now. Then comes the marketing campaign, right? What do Hollywood studios spend on big blockbusters like this where they're spending nearly $200 million to produce a film? Well, in this case, I can promise you that the figure is probably not a penny less than $100 million at Warner Brothers to promote Supergirl. Now, I can tell you right now, I have seen some wild estimates up there where Superman might have even exceeded $150 million, although we can't be for sure. I haven't seen enough data collected out there to suggest it might have been that high, although it very well could have. Deadline usually does a pretty good job each and every year doing their top 10 best and top 10 worst of profitability at the box office. Usually comes out in the first quarter of each year. So yeah, we're going to be waiting a few months to get some confirmation on that. But for the time being, if we assume that they spent probably at least $125 million on marketing Superman, which was my estimate, could be a good bit higher, Supergirl is probably almost assuredly coming in with another $100 million. This is a tentpole core intellectual property for Warner Brothers. This is not something you skimp on marketing with. And that being said, these marketing decisions and what to spend on them have a couple of factors you need to understand. Number one, these types of decisions in terms of capital outlay for this, sending cash out the door to buy television commercials, commercials on streaming, on AVOD, on FAST systems, commercials on YouTube, commercials on X, on Facebook, and just Google ads in general. Those decisions are made well in advance based on what kind of movie it is, how big the target audience could be, and of course, how much they're spending to produce the film. You're not going to find $200 million movies out there where the studio is going to skimp and only spend $40 or $50 million to promote it. Just not going to happen. Not in 2026, not with what ad prices are today.
Not today.
The other thing you need to consider for movies like this is when they go into theaters and they look to consume premium large format screens, things like IMAX or Dolby or 4DX or whatever off-name brand you have at your particular theater that is a premium large format screen. In other words, where they are charging higher than normal ticket prices, 20 to 25% higher ticket prices for PLF screens. If you're in an IMAX, it might even be as much as 30 to 40 to 50% higher, depending on where you are. You don't just get to walk into those screens on a whim, or you get them because you ask nicely. Theaters traditionally, like AMC, Regal, Cinemark, and we can go on down the line, will typically demand something from the studio in exchange for having access to their extremely valuable real estate. And part of that is the promise to spend X amount of dollars on a marketing campaign. So again, you can't skimp on the marketing for these kind of things, nor do you want to. Think about even the low-risk stuff, right? A couple of kids go out and start a lemonade stand, and maybe mom and dad invest a total of $100 to go out and buy a nice table with a tablecloth on it from Walmart. And then they go out and they spend money on lemons and sugar and sparkling water, right? They make it go real high-end, and they just put the kids out on the street in a little small neighborhood. Well, unless the kids go out there and tell everybody that they're out there selling lemonade, it doesn't matter how incredible that lemonade might be, especially on a summer day here in Louisiana. If nobody knows it exists, the audience for it's going to be limited. So what do? Maybe mom and dad go down to FedEx or Office Depot or whatever people do these days to make copies if they're not printing at home, and maybe spend $10 or $15 printing up a bunch of flyers for the kids to go stick up around the neighborhood, or knock on people's doors and say, hey, we're selling lemonade for $1 a glass. See, that's the marketing side of things. You have to do that. It doesn't matter how good the product is if you can't get people excited to even go buy it. So in drops this from Deadline magazine, and this has caused an enormous amount of confusion and in some cases downright, pardon my French, abject retardation by people who are just glazing for this film and trying to fight back against the reality that as of right now, 2 or 3 days before the movie opens, it's pretty much slated to financially struggle significantly at the box office. Again, we're talking about a movie that has an all-in cost of nearly $300 million between production and marketing. And after the theaters take their cut of roughly 50% on average around the world, where they give back a little bit more than 50% here in North America, but significantly less, closer to 40% as per theatrical financial records that we've reviewed countless times on this channel, in places that are outside of the US and, of course, not named China. If it's China, you're not getting back even 40%. You're lucky to get back 20 to 25. That means that Supergirl is going to need probably close to $550 million to $600 million, a figure relatively on par with The Mandalorian and Grogu, as you would expect, to really get over its cost hurdle, what nets back to the studio of close to $300 million. Nobody right now seems to believe it's going to get anywhere close to that. In fact, most people don't even know if this movie is going to cross $300 million. Matter of fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Supergirl drop over 60% in its second weekend. That's going to be a real big problem for this because, again, you've got so much other competition out there and there's just no energy behind this right now. Think about all the very expensive things going on for Supergirl at this time. All the ads that you're seeing popping up all over social media, website ads, pop-up ads when you visit Amazon or other places like that. Or how about all these big, expensive red carpet events? Yes, all of this factors into the marketing campaign that is paid for by the studio. But what about when other people do it? That's where this article comes in from Deadline, and the structure of the article is basically accurate, although people continue to either deliberately or just out of just sheer ignorance or just misinterpreting this. Supergirl's $100 million promo partner campaign is the biggest ever for Warner Brothers DC Studios. Now, I seem to remember a much larger figure for that than Superman last year, but I could be mistaken. We'll see. When Supergirl takes to the screen this Friday, she'll be the biggest Warner Brothers DC Studios movie ever when it comes to promotional partnerships with 80-plus sponsors who are delivering, and listen carefully, 100 million plus in media value. Now, we have to explain what this means, which we will in a moment, because people are completely getting this wrong, thinking that this is $100 million that somehow goes towards, quote unquote, the bottom line of the movie. In no way does it go towards the bottom line of the movie. Matter of fact, there's nary a single dollar of this, if a single dollar at all, that even goes to Warner Brothers. With names like Ulta Beauty Supply, OPI, Joyco, Kentucky Fried Chicken on board, Warner Brothers Global Partnerships' aim for the campaign is to tell or sell the edgy aspect of the DC universe while creating zeitgeist moments that would intrigue young women and families. First of all, I'm not so sure that a drunk, degenerate superhero like Supergirl is something that is going to appeal to young girls and mothers of young girls and families. Just a thought.
I don't need to drink. I can quit anytime I want.
Good luck with that. Know that when it comes to partnerships, that dollar amount is comprised of purchased advertisements, retail store space, as well as campaign, digital and linear impressions, meaning streaming, and cable television. And that doesn't just mean you still have a cable box. There's still 60 million cable subscribers out there for things like Charter, Spectrum, or Comcast, DirecTV, so on and so forth. They might not get it delivered through a cable box anymore. They may get it delivered through an app on their Apple TV or their Roku or their Fire Stick, but it is still a linear cable subscription nonetheless. So where does that $100 million go if it doesn't go to Warner Brothers? Well, clearly it is spent, or it is the proportional value of certain advertising campaigns that are spent on buying television ads and internet ads and YouTube ads and ads on Netflix and Hulu and so on and so forth. Now, to be fair, there are some accounts out there on social media that are reporting this in a fair and accurate manner, as is Deadline. Supergirl has a massive promotional partner tool that is generating $100 million plus in media value. That is a correct assessment. And how do they come to that conclusion? Well, it's simple. Of those 80 promotional partners out there like Samsung and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Ulta Beauty, what happens is with big blockbusters like this, they're going to go shopping very, very early, years in advance, a year or 2 years in advance as the movie is being planned, something this big, a big franchise IP, and they're going to go out there and shop to see, hey, who is going to have big new ad campaigns that are going to roll out or expected to roll out somewhere around the same time as this movie, and which one of them would like to do tie-ins for this. The reason is because it takes Warner Brothers' own $100 to $125 or $150 million that they spend to market giant blockbusters like DC movies, and it enhances them. It doesn't go towards the bottom line of the movie. It's not a cost recovery like a film tax credit for a studio that is cash in hand from a government entity. No, these are merely partners out there that said, hey, we would love to piggyback it because we really want to sell at KFC some more fried chicken, and if we put some DC stuff on there, it might help boost our sales. The key to understand is that KFC is in the business of selling the fried chicken, just like Ulta is in the business of selling girls lipstick and makeup. They're not in the business of selling Supergirl, but Supergirl is an enhancement. That's the value to them. The value back to Warner Brothers is that all of these other advertisements and campaigns out there from Ulta and from Samsung and from Kentucky Fried Chicken and so on are going to be landing at the same time the advertising for the movie is really ramping up, and it is going to increase the noise for Supergirl out there. So basically, Warner Brothers in this case gives up the rights, quote unquote, in a limited use set for really no money at all to these other companies who, in exchange for the ability to use that character and that intellectual property, promise in return a certain proportional value of their ad campaign. Let's say between the 80 of them out there that did this, they committed to, hey, we've got $400 million of ad campaigns coming up when Supergirl goes down. We'll put Supergirl in all of it. The proportional value, again, because they're not trying to sell primarily the movie, but their own products, the proportional value, let's say for academic purposes, might be 25% or $100 million. That's where this figure comes from. It's an estimated proportional value of the ad campaigns from other folks. They're not paying anything to get Warner Brothers properties to use in these limited circumstances, or if they are, it's tiny few fractions of a penny on the dollar, and Warner Brothers isn't paying them for it either. Basically, it's a system where everybody helps each other and everybody hopefully wins. But then we have the screamers out there, the people that know absolutely nothing, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody in particular here, but I just need to give examples so people understand how this works. $100 million plus merchandise sales. Not officially part of the box office, but definitely adds to the film's overall revenue. Supergirl will be fine financially. No. 100% no, 1,000% no, not happening, not how that works at all.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
This is not $100 million of merchandise sales. It's not even $100 million of licensing revenue to Warner Brothers. It's $100 million being spent with other people, not by Warner Brothers, that's helping Warner Brothers out. This does literally zero for the bottom line for this film. Sorry. I mean, this would have been a better use of the money. Just saying, I think this could have helped. Y'all let me know in the chat. But then there are some truly, truly angry people out there that just love to pick fights. And frankly, I don't mind engaging with them from time to time because it does provide some really good entertaining value and frankly fun things to put on videos like this where we make fun of idiots. By the way, I'm not talking about Disparu. I'm talking about one of the guys that replied to, you know what I meant. Disparu says Supergirl may flop at the box office and merch sales, but the real money is in sponsorships. And he's doing a little tongue-in-cheek sarcasm here. This guy, it's not going to flop, and now because of the product placement money, it doesn't need to make that much. Either way, DCU wins. I love it. Again, this is not product placement. This is not the same thing as, say, infamous comedy scenes in movies like Wayne's World, where they famously had made the whole scene joke about product placements in movies while holding a can of Pepsi and eating out of a bag of Doritos.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
That's a different thing entirely. There's no product placements here per se in the movie. That's not what marketing promotional partnerships are. They're simply what I said before. It's other companies spending money on their own ad campaigns that they then allow Warner Brothers to piggyback in Supergirl with effectively to enhance both marketing campaigns. And of course, I tried to explain to this gentleman, and he responds with, it's money that gets moved towards marketing, which then helps the profit margins at the end. Again, no, none of this $100 million is a cash flow to Warner Brothers. It doesn't offset any cost. Warner Brothers is not reducing its amount of marketing spend because it's getting promotional campaigns. Let me show you a really wild example. Spider-Man Far From Home shatters industry records with $288 million promo campaign. And I got news for you. Spider-Man No Way Home was also well north of $200 million in promotional marketing. And again, these are marketing partnerships. The number blows away the $200 million promo campaign of Avengers Endgame and is 106% higher than the $140 million promotional partner media total on Spider-Man Homecoming from 30 brands. So when all's said and done, $100 million is a big number for a promotional branded marketing partner campaign, there's to be no doubt. But it's by far and away nowhere near the biggest ones that have ever been. But again, trying to explain to folks, it still does nothing for Warner Brothers' bottom line. It just doesn't ring a bell with these folks. And then, of course, out came the pejoratives and the cusses and the name-calling, because that's when you do when your argument is collapsing. And this is my favorite. The guy makes my argument for me. On what planet do you live on, he says, where a $100 million deal does nothing to help the bottom line? It's simple. It's one where the money doesn't go to the people who need to recover their cost floors on it. Do you have any idea how crazy that is? And he gives me a faulty break-even point. You don't know about tax incentives. You don't know about tax rebates. You don't know about domestic versus international splits.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Wait till I get going.
Clearly, this guy doesn't know who I am and has never watched this channel. I'm the guy that kind of built this little cottage industry on YouTube 4 or 5 years ago by going into details on this stuff that nobody else had. Nobody else was doing live streams covering earnings reports for Warner Brothers, for Disney, for Paramount, for AMC theaters, and so on and so forth, where we actually got the real data and did 10-year backtesting in some cases to get the numbers right. And guess what? Even Deadline magazine agrees with us on how the splits work. Then this guy posts this. Because neither side writes a direct check, that $100 million in media value is not a production fee or debt. The movie does not need to make an extra $100 million to be profitable. In other words, he posts an AI piece that confirms what I'm saying. There's no changing of hands of $100 million. There's no reduction in the amount of marketing that Warner Brothers spends itself. It's simply another $100 million worth of proportional value to Supergirl on ad buys by people that aren't Warner Brothers. It's as simple as that. And again, as far as all the tax incentives and tax rebates, again, this guy seems to be missing the point that the $175 million production figure, again, was, by all accounting, for that I recall, was a net production cost, meaning that's after the tax rebates, after the tax incentives came in. But of course, before Warner Brothers spent another $100 to $125 million on marketing. The movie needs to recover $300 million net back to Warner Brothers. Net, as in what they get back from theaters, which means at the retail level at the box office, this movie's going to need close to $600 million. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you think Supergirl is going to get anywhere close.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.